Alright everybody, welcome to Tales from the 90s, the podcast where we talk about all things the 90s, pop culture, music, wrestling, Tales from the Crypt, my favorite thing, sports, just movies, TV shows, whatever we think about, we talk about here. But what I do, if you've never seen this before, I pick a random month and a random year from the 90s, and I go from there, and I don't do anything in order. Last week I was in 93, this week we're in 1998. So anyway, we're going to go back in time to October of 1998. October, of course, we're going to talk about a little bit of Halloween, so let's go.
Tales from the 90s never die. In our hearts they testify. VCRs and mixtape spins, where every tale begins. Tales from the crypt, marathons, wrestling wars and morning yawns. Play kickball in the street, man, those days can't be beat. Tales from the 90s never die.
Yeah, that's right. Whenever we do October on here, we speak about all things Halloween. So I got a few Halloween things on here. I wish I could remember my Halloween costumes of each year. I was 14 at the time, so I don't think I was still trick-or-treating. Or I might have been, I don't remember. Probably just got a Jason mask and went out with my brothers. But anyway, hope you guys have checked out our bonus episode. Bonus episode number 8 just came out last week. It's all about Saturday morning kids TV. My top 50 ranked Saturday morning cartoons and kids TV. Again, it's just my list. If you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the cartoon, number 1 on my list. But coming this month, I'm not exactly sure what day, is going to be my bonus episode. It's called Mothers and Fathers. It'll be sometime in June. This month, obviously, duh. Not exactly sure, but it's just going to be memories I have of my mom and my dad. And my wife's going to record some on her own, and I'll add it into the video. So we're not going to do it together per se, because it's easier to film one person at my little podcast studio looking thingy here. Which, by the way, sorry about the air conditioner in the background. It's hot today. And no specific reason I wore the cowboy hat. I just did it. Got the old Megazord in the background. Yes, it works. Scared my dog with this. Carlos, he's scared. Anytime I bring the tripod out for doing a video or something, he's always barking at it. He's crazy. But anyway, look for that. And then, of course, we got just all kinds of stuff. I'm always putting out Friday night. Well, this week is Thursday night karaoke. Just all kinds of videos. Anyway, we're going to get into this because we have actually a lot to cover. It took me quite a while putting a list of stuff, because what I do is I put a list of stuff to talk about from each category and look up a few facts, like TV shows. I look up what season it was on, just little stuff like that. I don't write out a script or anything. I'll look over at my notes, and that's where we go. But anyway, we're going to start out talking about books. And of course, the books I talk about the most on here are Goosebumps, of course, because my favorite book series of all time. Probably my favorite books. Well, I guess the series is more than one, so my favorite book series of all time, technically, I guess, for kids would be Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. But 2 of those books were done before the 90s, and 1 was done early 90s, so, there's only so many times you could check those out, because trust me, they were always in high demand, so. But Goosebumps, luckily, there was a lot of them. But when I talk about books on here, I talk about the ones that came out in that month, just so I can, because you only talk about your favorites so many times, so you got to talk about what came out this month. And there's an interesting one that came out this month. It was Goosebumps, Give Yourself Goosebumps Special Edition. Now, I've talked about it before, and actually I have one from the library right now, the Give Yourself Goosebumps. If you don't know, it's like the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Everybody remember those from the 80s and 90s? They might have even been out in the 70s for some of them. I can't remember, I can't remember. I wasn't there. But, by the way, I got the Reds game on. We're winning 4-2. Because I'm recording this. I normally record this in the morning. I'm recording this at night. But anyway, besides that, the Give Yourself Goosebumps is like Choose Your Own Adventure books, where you get to choose what to do. Except it's not completely choice. Some of them you flip a coin. Some of them, if you're The year you were born is an odd number, go to this page. Even number, you know, just whatever it happens to be. And actually, like I said, I have one right now. It's really interesting. I finally got to a satisfactory end, because most of the endings in these books, you die, or they insinuate you die, because they don't say you die in a kid's book. But for this one, this is a special edition book, Give Yourself Goosebumps, which I haven't seen any of them yet. I need to, because this one sounds real interesting. It's number 4, called One Night in Pain House. It has several endings, but only one where you don't die. Only one is satisfactory. All the other ones are bad endings, so to be able to pick out the right ending from the very beginning, I've never been able to do that, even Choose Your Own Adventure books. But also, in this book, there's like 11 items, and you like choose 3 of them when you start, so it gives even more options. It's just like, it's insane the amount of options in these books, like all the thought that was put into it. Hair hanging off there. But the other Goosebumps books that came out, this book that came out this month was Goosebumps 2000. Now, Goosebumps 2000 was a series that attempted to bring back just the regular style Goosebump books. They'd had different series after the original series ended. This was number 10, Headless Halloween. Perfect timing to come out that month. But yeah, it was sort of continuation of the regular Goosebumps series. The cover art was different, but it was done by the same artist. But yeah, it's just like, it's basically continuing the series. But you know the way thing, if you remember the 90s, everything towards the, not even the year, it didn't even have to be the year prior. It could be 1997 or something, and they'd be something 2000. I remember they had American Gladiators 2000. They had, you just put 2000 on it to be futuristic. that was a fad at the time. But anyway, we'll talk about sports. Baseball playoffs were going on. I'm watching the Reds game. If we don't blow it again, we're not doing the best this year. We're not out of it, but we're getting close to being out of it, and it's only beginning of June. Anyway, this time, we're not talking about today's time. Going back to October of 1998, of course, that was the year of the famous Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa home run race, where, you know, McGwire ended up getting the most at 70. But playoffs had started. The Reds finished 4th in their division, which the league had expanded to 30 teams. The Diamondbacks and the Rays joined the league, and somehow the Reds ended up getting in the, well, we were already in the Central Division, but we ended up getting 6 teams. That would change when the Astros moved to the American League in like 2012. Then all of them would be even. But anyway, we finished 4th, 25 games back. But like I said, the playoffs had started. I think it's raining. It's raining in Cincinnati. It's not raining here. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted. We'll go into the results of the playoffs. I'm gonna have to read off the list because I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, the Yankees swept the Rangers 3-0 in the American League Division Series. Cleveland beat Boston 3-1, and then the National League, Atlanta swept Chicago 3-0, and San Diego beat Houston 3-1. Then in the ALCS, the Yankees defeated Cleveland 4-2, and San Diego won the NLCS, beating Atlanta 4-2. And then, of course, the World Series, the Yankees swept the Padres 4 games to none. And Scott Brosius from the Yankees was the MVP. And a few of the awards for the year, Rookies of the Year were Kerry Wood of the Cubs. Everybody remembers his historic 20 strikeout in a game performance, and he was just a rookie that year. And then Ben Grieve of the A's, and Cy Young Awards, which of course, if you don't know baseball, goes to basically the best pitcher of the year. Tom Glavine of the Braves and Roger Clemens of the Yankees. And Manager of the Year were Larry Dierker of the Astros and Joe Torre, of course, of the World Series champion Yankees. Sammy Sosa of the Cubs was MVP of the National League, and Ivan Rodriguez was MVP of the American League for the Rangers. And then the Reds actually won a couple awards that year despite being bad. Brett Boone, our second baseman, won the Gold Glove Award, and Barry Larkin won the Silver Slugger Award of the shortstops. He had the best, I believe they go by average, I believe he had the best average of shortstops. And the Reds just threw the ball away. I thought I was about to say, and this one belongs to the Reds, but no, it don't. Anyway, that was baseball. Like I said, it was getting to the end of the year. But of course, that also means it's getting to the beginning of the year of the NFL. And at the end of October, which is where I get my results for the leaders of divisions of each month, I go to the end of the year, or the end of the month. The leaders at the end of the month for the AFC were the Bills, the Dolphins, the Patriots, and Jets. They were all in a tie at 5-3, or 5-3 for the AFC Eastern Division at the time, is what it was called. Yeah, but they were all in a 5-3 tie, and then the other leaders were the Jaguars and the Broncos. The Broncos were actually undefeated at the time. They were 8-0. They ended up going 13-0, and had the best start since the 1972 Dolphins, which was that famous team that went undefeated the whole year and won the Super Bowl. The Bengals were tied with the Ravens at the time for the last in the Central Division, 2-6. We'd only won one more game that whole year. We finished third and 3-13, tied for the worst team in all of the NFL. The NFC leaders at the time were the Cowboys, Vikings, Falcons, and 49ers. And then Super Bowl wouldn't happen until the end of January, of course, but the Broncos, going undefeated most of the year, beat the Falcons, and I believe that was the first of 2 Super Bowl championships for the Broncos. It's either the first of 2 or the second of the 2. But that was the time that they won back-to-back. In the second year, John Elway retired after winning the Super Bowl. Perfect ending to his career. But NASCAR was also getting towards the end. Of course, NASCAR's last month is November. Go over some race results. Mark Martin won the UAW GM Quality 500 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Dale Jarrett won at Talladega. Jeff Gordon won the Pepsi 400, the night race at Daytona. And Rusty Wallace won the Duralube Kmart 500 at Phoenix. And speaking of Jeff Gordon, he ended up winning his 3rd championship the very next month. Like I said, it ends in November. I'm still waiting to see if the Reds freaking finish this game out. Pitcher delivers, because I'm not sure what pitcher it is. Oh boy. That's hit bad. Did he catch it? He caught it! Holy crap! What a catch, and this one belongs to the Reds. That was an impressive catch. Ball almost went over the wall. Anyway, Reds beat the Brewers 4-2, forcing a rubber match tomorrow. Okay, now that that's over, I'm going to turn it off so I can't see it no more. And I'm going to focus on this podcast before everybody tunes out, which they probably already are. Anyway, I want to talk about, that's some lighthearted stuff there. Kind of some stuff that not as lighthearted. This was getting towards the end, 1998 of October. Towards the very end of living with the wonderful Marky Foe. I'd remember during that summer, like I said, the Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa home run race, just summers of listening to it on the back porch. We had this enclosed porch that Marky Foe called the bar because he had an actual bar in there. Was planning on making it one. He had all his junk that he'd gotten from bars and stuff. My mom eventually broke out all the windows too after they'd broken up, and he had the nerve to call the cops on her even though they were both on the lease. But anyway, I remember summers of not being able to go outside, but I can listen to the game outside because we were always in trouble for some reason, or not even in trouble, just not allowed outside. But things were getting real bad on the abusive front from Mr. Marky Foe's stepdad, if you don't know who I'm talking about. But me and Travis, it was mostly me and Josh. Travis was still a little too young, so he wasn't getting the brunt of all this stuff. And I'm not saying that to be like I have any resentment towards him. He was still in diapers, I believe. Well, not this time. Wasn't in diapers. He was 7 years old then. But when the abuse actually was starting, he was still in diapers. So I guess for some reason, that got him out of. Later on, he became one of Marky Foe's favorites or something. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not trying to say that I resent him at all. It was just me and Josh mostly got the real bad parts of everything. But we would always entertain ourselves. Had a radio down in the basement that I'd snuck down and close. And for some reason, I didn't do the same thing to sneak them back because I was always in the basement having to wash and dry everybody's clothes, all the time. And the washer took forever, and the dryer took forever. And I accidentally broke the dryer door one day. But anyway, a lot of stuff went on in that basement. I'd snuck the radio down there, Two things with media. One with the radio, but before I get into that, I want to talk about the TV. I had discovered ECW thanks to kids at school, which I'd never even seen before because I didn't know it was on so late in the morning. So I set this little, we had this like exercise machine under, and under the steps is kind of this like, it's not a room, but it's like you can go under there, and there was like a little, I guess not a doorway, but that's what I'm calling it. There's like this little section under the steps. I guess it's a storage area. But put this exercise thing there and a TV there so it wouldn't be found out. And I would go down there and watch ECW or just watch other stuff while I was doing laundry. In fact, the year before, in 1997, when the Florida Marlins won the World Series, I was watching the game down in the basement, doing laundry as always. But anyway, we had this radio we snuck down there. And for some reason, we couldn't figure out how to get it up. I guess Marky Foe was home. Oh yeah, this was the time when he was, for some reason they decided to move from upstairs. They gave him and my mom decided to move from upstairs in their room to just living in the living room on the fold-out couch, which couldn't have been freaking comfortable. But anyway, I always remember him peeing the bed. Yes, he peed the bed all the time. Maybe it was because they're right next to the little bathroom closet that was right there. Maybe he couldn't walk 2 steps to get to the other bathroom upstairs. Anyway, that's why we couldn't do it, because he could always, like, I guess he always checked the clothes or something, or most of the clothes went by his bed, so we couldn't really sneak it upstairs. Anyway, we got this bright idea to try to sneak it through the heat vents that went from the basement to the main floor to the second floor. And we tried and tried, but this did not work. And there was a few times we got this radio so stuck it's not funny. And I have a lot of memories of this radio. It was like this teal radio. It was like a girl's radio. I don't even know how we got it. I think we got it used because it had paint all over it, I remember. And we didn't do that. So we must have got it used or something. Maybe we got it out of the garage from the Marky Foe's friends that left all their stuff out there, where we got the football I've talked about before, which is the Nike shoe that I threw through the window and then tried to make people think. I tried to make my mom, Marky Foe, think that a neighbor came by and threw a shoe through the window so we didn't get in trouble. Actually, what it was is I was wrestling with Josh and he didn't want to, and I like pushed him and his hand went through the window. He didn't get cut from it, but it broke the window. And I tried to make it look like the football, which we called football because that's how we either had a football that was made of duct tape or we played with this Nike shoe. And I can make some spirals with a freaking Nike shoe. This is like a size 12, 13, and I can make some tight spirals with a Nike shoe. Anyway, must have been where this radio came from. But I also remember, because we weren't even allowed to openly listen to the radio even. Could only do that when he was gone and it was just mom there or just us there, which is a lot because he was either working or at the bar. It was his main hobby. But I remember discovering at like midnight this, I think it was Love Line or something, where callers would call in and ask questions about a certain subject that kids shouldn't be hearing about. But I would put it like right next to my ear, just enough so I could hear, but nobody else could hear. And I would like listen to this at night. I was learning all kinds of things I probably shouldn't have learned. But I was like, it's like, this is the greatest show ever. I had to stay up every night and listen to it unless I fell asleep before it came on. But anyway, that radio, been through a lot. Another thing we did in the basement was we made the suspender ring. Of course, you know me and my wrestling. I'm sorry I'm taking forever on this. It's just bringing a lot of memories up. Me and my wrestling obsession. We decided to make a ring in the basement because there's this giant steel, whatever it is, pole that's basically part of what holding up the house, and that, and there was some other things that we made a square because we found this piece of wood because that was our ring. We didn't even try to put any clothes on it or anything to. Yeah, I think we did. We eventually tried to put some clothes on it to cushion it, but that only seemed to make it harder. But our idea was to wrestle in that, and we needed ropes. We didn't have like a garden hose or string or anything. We used Marky Foe suspenders because he wore suspenders all the time instead of belts, and he had a bunch of them. So we would clip them around in a square, and it actually turned out good because they bounced. It's just the only problem is I was either wrestling my brothers or they didn't. after the first couple times, they didn't want to wrestle me. We ended up just wrestling stuffed animals because it was too hard to try to do anything. And of course, back then, we didn't know anything about wrestling other than they're really trying to beat each other up. So we didn't even try to do any kind of things where we, like, I'm going to do this move to you. It was, it was real combat. It's still real to me. But yeah, we had to try to entertain ourselves. Like, I got Marky Fo had the stereo, and it had a dual cassette deck, which was huge at the time. Didn't even have a CD player, so it wasn't a state of the art, but it had a dual cassette deck, and you can record one thing from another. Obviously you can also record off the radio or something. But you can record from one tape to another. So I had this tape all the time tape music, and I taped the Alabama 18-wheeler song. And whenever we'd sing it, it would come on. We'd be going, instead of 18-wheeler, we go 18 wieners. So one day I just decided to take the 18-wheeler part and make him say it 18 times. So literally in a row he goes 18 wieners. And you don't say wieners, but we did 18 wieners 18 times in a row. Like, that's the type of stuff we just did to entertain ourselves. Like, it was so stupid, but I mean, it got our minds from thinking about, when's the next beating coming. Like I said, I'm not trying to take this podcast to a dark place. I've put all that stuff to rest. It don't bother me anymore. I just try to look at the humor in it. Things are getting bad, but we were getting... It's probably why I can entertain myself for hours. I swear if I, for some reason, ever went to prison and had to go in the hole, I would be entertained. Like, I used to come up with, I would come up with baseball games in my head. I would make teams of, okay, this team's going to be me and my brothers and neighborhood kids, and the other team's going to be kids I knew from school. And I would, just come up with a way to, this, he gets a hit, he gets out, and come up with a whole baseball game in my head and be doing that as I fell asleep. It sounds really strange and weird, but just ways I entertain myself. But anyway, we're going to move on to the stuff that other people know about, because that's just my personal life there. We're going to talk about wrestling. There was a lot going on in wrestling at the time. There was 2 pay-per-views this month. We'll start off with, on October 18th, was WWF In Your House. Don't mind the psycho sound. It's just my email. But WWF In Your House Judgment Day from Chicago, Illinois. It's the 25th of the In Your House pay-per-views, but the first Judgment Day, which would become a regular pay-per-view for a few years. Christian defeated WWF Light Heavyweight Champion Taka Michinoku. I knew I was going to mess that up. Taka Michinoku to win the title. X-Pac defeated WWF European Champion D'Lo Brown to win the title. I remember D'Lo Brown as European Champion. He would pretend to be from the different European countries. Man, that was some classic times. The main event between Undertaker and Kane for the WWF title was Stone Cold as referee. And leading up to this, of course, Vince is on his constant crusade to get the title away from Stone Cold. He finally did that, and then he's going to let Undertaker and Kane fight for the title. But then, he was caught flipping Undertaker and Kane off, and Vince didn't think they'd seen him. Undertaker turned around and seen it, and they beat the crap out of Vince, broke his ankle, put him in the hospital, and that led to some all-time classic stuff. And Psycho's back. If you think of the classic Attitude Era of WWF, you think of this stuff. Of course, the next week Vince is in the hospital, so you know where I'm going with that. Stone Cold makes a visit, hits him in the head with the bedpan, shoves the enema up his butt. But also we get the debut of Sacco there, because Mankind is still trying to suck up to Vince, and he's bringing all this, Yerple the Clown making balloon animals. She got a trick with a balloon animal. I don't want to know what Mick was doing with that clown. But anyway, that's where he came up with the freaking Sacco. And then later, still leading up to this pay-per-view, they'd have the classic thing where Austin would fill up Vince's Corvette with cement and just destroy it. I think they had that, I think it's a Corvette, convertible, whatever it is. I think they had that on display for a while, with the cement in it. But yeah, anyway, Stone Cold refused to count the pin for either of them, so the title was still vacant. So that would lead to Survivor Series happening next month, and the screw job, Mankind, like he said, trying to suck up to Vince. Vince gives him the hardcore title, says, I'm going to make you champion. Turns out to be all a ruse just to get Mankind in the finals to lose to the real corporate champion, The Rock. Basically recreating the Montreal screw job from the year before, but having The Rock join Vince and go from the People's Champion to the corporate champion, and that would lead The Rock going back to heel, and of course that would lead to him and Stone Cold at WrestleMania and the start of not the start of their feud. They started their feud before Stone Cold got huge, like when he was still like becoming a big star, back for the Intercontinental title. The throwing it into the river and all that stuff that they recreated later when The Rock threw the Smoking Skull belt in the river. So I go back again. It's all fantasy baseball stuff. But anyway, yeah, that was a crazy time in the WWF and a lot of iconic moments. Not so iconic, more like infamous coming for WCW. October 25th was their annual Halloween Havoc. It's from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, and it's their 10th Halloween Havoc. And the fans, in most fans' minds, WCW's big event was Starrcade, which was November originally, then moved to December. But according to Eric Bischoff, who ran WCW during most of this time period, the event that they actually booked as like the big one of the year was Halloween Havoc, because it was done there in Las Vegas, and they had that huge Slim Jim sponsorship that gave them all the money. But the fans, it'd be Starrcade, but to them it was Halloween Havoc. And what do they do for their big event? We'll get to that. But it starts off great here. Rick Steiner and Buff Bagwell defeated WCW World Tag Team Champions The Giant and Scott Steiner. Now, first of all, Scott Steiner wasn't one half of the Tag Team Champions. Scott Hall was. But they were all in the NWO, so they kind of they let him take Scott Hall's place. He was wrestling later on anyways. But anyway, despite them winning, Buff Bagwell actually turned on Rick Steiner during the match, but Rick Steiner still won the Tag Team titles. So what does he do? He wins, obviously, but he gets to pick any partner of his choosing to be champion with him. Who does he choose? Kenny Chaos, like a jobber guy that was in was it High Voltage or something? Like lower card tag teams that nobody really remembers, outside of a couple matches on WCW Saturday Night. And then he gets injured. So who do you think he picks? All kinds of people. I could pick, Roddy Piper, Ric Flair, Sting. Well, Sting was kind of... No, I can't remember if Sting was with the Wolfpack at the time or not. I don't think so. Anyway, my point is, he picks Judy freaking Bagwell, Buff Bagwell's mom, who later got put on a pole in a match, or on a forklift, because she couldn't fit on a pole. But anyway, the ironic thing there is, they get stripped of the tag team titles, not because of ridiculous Judy Bagwell being his partner, but because Rick Steiner legitimately gets injured. If he hadn't got injured, what would have happened? Would we have seen like the greatest tag team run of Judy Bagwell? But anyway, that's how we start this pay-per-view. Then we get one of the worst matches by everybody's standards of Hollywood Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. Yes, that match. Now, everybody remembers the classic match from 1990 at WrestleMania 6. That was, one of the greatest matches of all time, even though it was Hogan and Warrior. Obviously it's not like Ric Flair, Bret Hart, Stone Cold levels, but for what it was really good, Choreographed as it came out really good. This one was just crap fest. Had Hogan seeing Warrior behind him in the mirror and he wasn't there leading up to this, and all this weird stuff. And the trapdoor incident, I think, happened the next month with there's this trapdoor that Ultimate Warrior used, or he was called the Warrior because he couldn't be called the Ultimate Warrior. But anyway, that stupid trapdoor in the ring that actually caused huge decline in the British Bulldog's career because he got slammed on like the part of the why put a door in the ring with like hinges and stuff? It's going to injure somebody, and it did. But anyway, that's the next month. That's not this month. Besides it being slow and plodding as you'd expect in 1998 from those two, Hogan goes to throw a fireball in Warrior's face, I don't know what the finish, if that was supposed to be the finish or what, but he completely screws up, burns his own beard and mustache, Hogan does, and they have to improvise. They send Hogan's pretty much worthless nephew Horace in for like what's called one of the worst chair shots ever. It hits Warrior with it, and that's how Hogan wins. But all that and the extra time led to fans actually missing the main event, which was a really good match between WCW World Champion Bill Goldberg and Diamond Dallas Page. Goldberg won the match, but right before the match even started, for a lot of people, the pay-per-view feed cut off because, back then, if you weren't done at the set time, it goes off the air. It wasn't every pay-per-view feed. Some got to see it, but a whole lot didn't. Turner ended up having to pay out millions of dollars in refunds, and they ended up showing it on Nitro the next night. But, all that crap, and they didn't get to see a really good match. It was a cluster. But some other title changes that took place in the month. There was a WWF Intercontinental title tournament. Triple H was stripped of the title. He had it was a knee injury, and storyline mode, Vince stripped him because DX was against the corporation. And anyway, Ken Shamrock defeated X-Pac in the finals of the tournament on Raw to win the title. October 24th, the Dudley Boys defeated ECW World Tag Team Champions Sabu and RVD to win those titles on Hardcore TV. And then that very next Nitro after Raw, the one I was talking about where they had to show the DDP match with Goldberg for free because they screwed up, DDP actually defeated Bret Hart to win the WCW US title that night. And I don't know if he was originally supposed to, or if there's like, here's we're making it up for the crap yesterday. But yeah, that's wrestling. A tale of two companies, and now you see why. Not the only reasons, but you can see why WWF was on a monstrous run and WCW is falling off around this point. We still ain't even seen the finger poke of doom yet. That was to come in 2 months. But anyway, some video games released this month. Both games were released for Windows, but they'd been released the month before previously for consoles. So whenever I do the September edition of 1998, I'll talk about them again. But NFL Blitz was released, and originally it came out the year before in the arcade. But then, like I said, September was released for Nintendo 64 and PlayStation. And if you don't know NFL Blitz, it's obviously a football game, but it is like a super arcade game where you can... it's nowhere near like the Maddens or the 2K games where, everything's realistic. They're cartoony looking characters. You got to go 30 yards, but it's almost like nothing. You can hit them after the play. You can do like wrestling moves to them. It is so much fun, and anybody can play it. Like, I had wars with my brothers over on, and we played on Nintendo 64. But I also had it for, believe I had it for either Xbox or PlayStation 2. And my kids played me in it, and they could actually compete and actually beat me sometimes. And it wasn't like other games, sometimes you let your kids win. There's like I was competing trying to beat them, and they would sometimes beat me just because there's literally a game any age could pick up. It's just so much fun, and I can't say enough about that NFL Blitz. And then the other game that came out for computer, but the month before came out for PlayStation 1. Was Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit. It was the first time the Need for Speed games had the Hot Pursuit part of it, which was, of course, police chases. And you could actually be the police. I think you could be the police. I'm not sure if in that first one if you could, but later on you could. But anyway, you could run from the police, and you get more stars on you and more police after you. And you start off with a couple cops, lead up to where they start sending out huge, tons of cars, spike strips, all kinds of. Later games would have like devices where you could like try to blow up the cars. Like I said, I don't remember from that first one with the police if you could actually be the police in that one too. Let me know if you remember playing that game. I don't have any memories of playing that one, but we played Hot Pursuit 2 for PlayStation 2 a whole lot in our house. It was Josh's game, and we played that all the time. But I'm gonna move on to some kids meals toys. Last week I did one on the McDonald's Happy Meal toys, and I'd actually found some for Burger King and Wendy's too. Found information because, you know, I don't have the direct memory. I'll remember what came out this month. So you got to go on these lists, and I just find every week doing research for this podcast, I find some like awesome lists of stuff. But I found these. McDonald's Happy Meal toys for the month of October were Ronald and Pal's Haunted Halloween Nerds Candy dispensers. And they were like your typical kids Halloween characters, like ghosts and cats and witches and pumpkins and like little toys, but they were also like a set of Pez dispensers. They dispensed nerds, you know, the Nerds candy. And Burger King had the Casper meets Wendy's toy. Wendy's. that should be for Wendy's. Casper meets Wendy toys. Casper meets Wendy was a like a direct-to-video sequel to that Casper movie, I think from '96 or '95, the real popular one. But anyway, it was, I think, Hilary Duff's first starring role. She was in that. She was playing Wendy. But anyway, the toys are Casper and the Ghostly Trio, as well as some other toys from like the Casper universe. And you know, the movie for that had just come out the month before. And Wendy's had two of them. They started off with Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, and these were Scooby-Doo toys based on the movie that came out the month before. It was the Zombie Island movie. And then at the end of the month, but it was still in October, so I'm still counting it, is Animaniacs toys. Obviously based on the Kids WB series. Yakko, Wacko, and Dot were characters, and then a couple other toys that did like different actions. You know how you have the toys that just, you know, you push a button or you pull this, you turn this, you know, action toys is what I call them. But we didn't get a lot of kids meals then. I would have loved to have some of these toys. A lot of them are worth a lot of money. Just, you know, but you always seen the toys in the commercials and all, you know, no matter what you're watching. If you're watching a kids show, you're going to see at least Happy Meal toy commercials, if not Burger King and Wendy's. But anyway, we're going to do the Nickelodeon up now for the week. I picked a random day. It's Friday. It's October 9th of 1998. And I give a full 24 hours based on here of Nickelodeon, what was on October 9th, which again was a Friday. We start, of course, Nickelodeon. If you're starting at midnight, you're watching Nick at Night. We got the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Taxi, Newhart, Dick Van Dyke Show, Bob Newhart Show. You know, I didn't really watch any of those. At 2:30, Brady Bunch was on. I remember watching that a lot. That was one of my mom's favorite shows too. Then we got the Wonder Years, which I didn't watch much of. Happy Days, I love. I just caught an episode of that the other day. Then we got Laverne and Shirley. I Love Lucy, another one of my mom's favorites. Nick News, a special edition, The Clinton Crisis. I'll talk about Bill Clinton in a little bit. But I can't believe they had Nick News. What were they telling kids? The president did some stuff with this nice Monica Lewinsky woman. See, kids, when a man loves... I don't know how they explained that to kids. Probably not. They probably just said he was lying and was getting impeached or whatever they said. But anyway, the start of kids TV, besides the Nick News there, was one of my favorite cartoons, Inspector Gadget. Then we got Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon, of course. Ah, Real Monsters. I love that. That was just a crazy one. Definitely built for Halloween. Rocko's Modern Life, the fourth ever Nicktoon, one of my favorite cartoons. You're on Nickelodeon, Charlie Brown. Of course, the Nickelodeon-avised edition of Charlie Brown, which I really didn't care much for Charlie Brown. Everybody loves the Charlie Brown Christmas, Thanksgiving. I don't really care for it. If you do, that's fine. We got Rugrats, one of the first three Nicktoons. The episode was Chucky's First Haircut and Cool Hand Angelica. Then at 9, we've got Little Bear. Love that. I just seen that recently. Rafting on the River, Little Bear's Kite, and Night of the Full Moon. Then at 9:30, we've got Blue's Clues. Blue wants to play a game. Blue's not at the door. My dogs think Blue's here. It must be their celebrity crush. Then at 10, we got The Busy World of Richard Scarry. Message in a Bottle, Santa Needs Help. There really is an Easter Bunny. Okay, it's October, but they've got Christmas and Easter episodes on. Richard Scarry was busy. No, I love that cartoon. Just like the whole animal world. Then we got 10:30. We got Muppet Babies. Quoth the Weirdo. That weirdo would be me, apparently, for singing the Muppet Babies. Then we got Gullah Gullah Island. I love this show. Friendship, Just the Perfect Blend Ship. Those are the name. I'm giving the names of the episodes because that's a thing they've recently started putting on here as names of episodes when they have them. Which is pretty cool. They can go back and tell you the exact lineup of what was on that day and the episode names for some of them. Then we got the busy world of Richard Scarry again. Oh boy, what do we got? St. Patrick's Day and Hanukkah? No, the Talking Bread. Reminds me of the fat kid in Bad Santa talking Jesus and the Talking Walnut. You don't know what the heck he's talking about. Anyway, the Talking Bread, Couscous, the North African Detective, the Three Fishermen. Richard Scarry is busy, I'm telling you. No Halloween episode. Of course, this is the beginning of October. Sometimes they didn't have the Halloween, which I'll be talking about some Halloween specials later on, but sometimes they didn't show them to the end. Nowadays, Halloween's like a whole October celebration. Not so much back then, which would have been awesome. Little Bear again, Whale of a Tale, Mitzi Arrives, and Granny's Old Flying Rug. Then we got Blue's Clues again, Adventures in Art. Then Rupert, episode Rupert and Queen Bess. Then we got the Wobulous World of Dr. Seuss, which I never watched. Norval the Great. Here on Nickelodeon, Charlie Brown, Snoopy's Robot. Snoopy had a robot, apparently. Then we got Tiny Toon Adventures. Great cartoon. Her Wacky Highness was the episode. Then Garfield and Friends, another great cartoon. Invasion of the Big Robots, Ham-A-Lot, First Class Feline. Apparently there was robot theme that day. Then we got Doug, another one of the 3 original Nicktoons. Doug Takes the Case and Doug's Secret Song. Then Clarissa Explains It All. Melissa Joan Hart, loved that show. Didn't care for Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but I loved Clarissa Explains It All. Sam's Swan Song. I remember that one. Sam was her friend that came through the window. I guess I think that was the one where Sam was moving. We got Rocco's Modern Life again, Spitballs and Popcorn Pandemonium. Then Cat Dog, which I didn't really watch, but it was a new episode. It says Party Animal, Mush Dog Mush. Then we got All That, which was of course a regular Snick episode, or a Snick series that they would show sometimes during the day. Basically like the Mad TV of Nickelodeon. Everybody says Saturday Night Live, but I hate that show. Anyway, I guess they list Malcolm Jamal Warner was a guest host of it, and of course he's most famous for The Cosby Show and musical guest Brandy. Then at 6 we've got Figure It Out. Love that game show where they'd have contestants on that were trying to stump the celebrity panel to try to not get them to guess what they did to become famous or to win an award or something, and they win prizes. Anyway, Somersaults Off Father's Shoulders on Moving Horse. I guess that was the name of they're giving the names of like what they did to become famous. So the celebrity panel had to guess these. Somersaults Off Father's Shoulders on Moving Horse and Built Winning Bird Scaring Mannequin. I don't know how the celebrities would have guessed that one. Then we got The Secret World of Alex Mack, which I never really watched. False Alarms. We got Doug again, Doug's Fair Lady and Doug Says Goodbye. Rugrats again, The Alien and Mr. Clean. Then at 8 we got Kablam. I watched that all the time. That's like cartoon shorts. That was a new episode. Holdeth the Pickle, Holdeth the Lettuce. And this was part of the Nickel O-Zone, as they called it on Friday nights. Sort of trying to be like the Snick, but of course it wasn't as popular as Snick. Then we got Animorphs, which I never really watched. It was like a live action show, kind of like the Big Bad Beetleborgs or VR Troopers or even Power Rangers type show. The episode was called The Message. It was a new one. Then at 9 o'clock we go back to Nick at Night. We got the Brady Bunch again, The Wonder Years, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, I Love Lucy, and Bewitched. So that is the Nickelodeon on a Friday night at the beginning of October. And don't know if I was actually watching it then. I was probably not at my granny's house, which was mostly where we watched Nickelodeon, so I probably wasn't watching that night. Although I could have been. I could have went over there for the weekend. It's very likely. So obviously I won't remember those exact episodes, but anyway, before we're done talking about the TV lineups, I want to talk about the TGIF lineup. Of course, that was of course ABC's Friday night lineup. which would have been up against this Nickelodeon lineup. First, we've got Two of a Kind, which only went one season. It was Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen comedy. They were 12 years old in that one, so it was a couple years after Full House had ended. It had been such a huge hit for ABC, they gave them their own show, which only lasted a season. Then we get Boy Meets World Season 6, and this is the season they started college. And the episode's in October. The first one is right after the very first episode of the season where, you know how the season 5 ended, where they were graduating high school and Topanga proposed to Corey, and Corey was like stunned. Well, they agreed to get married, obviously, but they wanted to like elope, and the whole family was mad at them. They ended up not doing it. They ended up getting married later on, obviously, but they ended up not doing it. Mr. Feeney announced his retirement. You know, after they'd left high school, he felt he'd done all he could do. You know, basically his favorite students were gone, so he retired to Wyoming. Corey goes all the way out there and basically brings him back, but Eric is not happy. He's like going nuts at the thought of Feeney retiring. And of course, this is before, you know, the season before, I think, is when they introduced Jack, which was Sean's half brother. You know, a kid that Sean's dad had with another woman, and Rachel, their roommate. And Eric and Jack were, of course, fighting over Rachel, which ended up can't remember, I think she ended up with Jack. I think. But, you know, and then the other episodes where they were starting college, as I said, Corey goes to try to bring Mr. Feeney back. Mr. Feeney does come back, but decides to actually take some courses at college, but then ends up trying to teach the class. So the dean there's like helps him realize that he should be teaching there, not being a student. And the woman that plays the dean is actually William Daniels, the guy who plays Mr. Feeney. His wife, they've been together for like, I don't even know, 50, 60 something years. And I didn't even realize at the time, you know, watching, that they were marriid. I think they ended up getting married. I know they got together on the show, but I believe they got married on the show. I don't know if it was on the show or they're engaged. Anyway, they come to find out that they were actually together in real life. Sabrina the Teenage Witch was the third show. They were in the third season. And then the final show of the TGIF lineup was Brother's Keeper, and it ran for just one season, and it was canceled due to low ratings, and I have no memories of the show at all, so I can't even talk about it really. But I'm going to move on to music now. I'm trying to speed things along. I know it's been like 48 minutes. I'm sorry. But, of course, my favorite music is country music. But I do list Billboard Hot 100 songs. The song number one for 2 weeks was The First Night by Monica. I know who Monica is, but I've never heard the song. And then, I guess pun intended, not intended, One Week by the Bare Naked Ladies was number one for 1 week. Then we went back to the First Night by Monica, number one for another 2 weeks, plus a week in November, in November. So it was like 5 weeks total, you know, with the 1 week song in between. But the American Country Countdown, dominating this month was Tim McGraw's song "Where the Green Grass Grows" from his Everywhere album, that was pretty much what put him on the map as a star. That was number one for 4 weeks. And then Shania Twain, "Honey I'm Home," ended up the month with 1 week at number one. And then some sad news on October 2nd. Gene Autry, of course, the singing cowboy, he also owned depending on what you want to call it at the time, or what time period it was, California, Anaheim, or Los Angeles Angels, the baseball team. He owned them, but he died of lymphoma. But, you know, one of the first singing cowboys, you know, he was a country singer, and he went to Hollywood and became more famous for his movies than any of his music. But you know, an obvious legend. And you know, like I said, he died of lymphoma, so that's definitely some sad news. We're going to talk briefly a little bit about TV here. This year was the Fox Family Channel, which ended up becoming ABC Family, which ended up becoming Freeform now, I think is what it is. Anyway, this is the year I cannot speak because I'm trying to go too fast. They debuted their first ever 13 Nights of Halloween event, which they continue even, still on Freeform. The 13 Nights of Halloween, and every day they show freaking Hocus Pocus, which I can't stand. I know you're gonna kill me for that one, but I cannot stand Hocus Pocus, and they show it every day during the month. It's like the 24 Hours of a Christmas Story. I don't like that movie either. I just lost all kinds of viewers, but I don't like Hocus Pocus. I don't like A Christmas Story. Anyway, 2 shows debuted this month. One lasted 8 seasons. One didn't even get through a full season. Charmed on the... Well, there was more... I should say there's more debuted, but just ones I've seen. Because I'm not going to list every one, and have no memories of like, oh, I don't remember this, I don't remember this. That would be boring. I just want to list the ones that I do remember. Charmed on the WB. I didn't watch it when it was on, but I later watched it with my wife and really fell in love with the show. It lasted 8 seasons, and they did a reboot recently. I thought it, from what I've seen of it, sucked, so the least I say about that, the better. But just so many different story arcs throughout Charmed, and character changes, but not like... But, with the way the show was, it could easily be explained. It wasn't like, someone just goes missing, like in Family Matters, where the sister's just gone from the show and they never mention her. But anyway, it lasted 8 seasons. Like I said, I never watched it at the time. And the other show is Brimstone, which I didn't watch at the time. I later watched that with my dad and my grandpa, like the early 2000s on Sci-Fi. But it was a Fox show, and it only lasted 1 season for 13 episodes. And I don't know if that was, they either got cut early or if they only intended the 13 episodes. It was a really good show. It was about this cop that died, and he went to hell because he wasn't saved. And I guess in this weird universe, if there was like all these souls escaped hell, and if he brought them all back to the devil would let him go to heaven, I guess, or either that or return to life. I can't remember which it was. But anyway, they didn't get far enough into the thing. But from the episodes I've seen, and I may have seen them all, I can't remember. But really good show. But I don't know why it got canceled. Stupid ratings crap happens all the time. One show that ended this year was Wishbone. Everybody remembers Wishbone from PBS. It went 2 seasons, about the dog that always daydreamed about being these different literary characters. It's a great PBS show that helped people with learning about books and stuff. PBS always entertaining, but also always informative. And then a couple of channel changes. This is the time when digital cable was coming into being, so they were expanding even the HBOs. They had HBO 2 and HBO 3. Those became HBO Plus and HBO Signature. And now I think they have like 5 or 6 different HBOs. I think, yeah. And then they have the different Cinemaxes and stuff. But yeah, digital cable was really coming into its own at this time, and long since past the days of just the few channels on TV, and even just the 30 channels on regular cable. You get all these channels. Where are we at now? 53 minutes. I'm trying to hurry and not take you guys' time up too much. But a lot to talk about. One item of news to talk about, and I mentioned it briefly earlier. The U.S. House of Representatives votes to begin impeachment hearings of President Clinton for lying about the Monica Lewinsky affair. If you were around in this time period, this is all you heard about, especially on Jay Leno, one of my favorite things to watch. I always watched the monologue, and then the second segment, which was either Mondays it was headlines, or he'd go interview people on the street, or other comedy skits. I normally only watched the guests if it was someone I cared about, which I normally didn't, or if it's the music guests that I cared about. But anyway, I'm not talking about Jay Leno right now. This was everywhere. Everybody was talking about this. Of course, he had the affair with Monica Lewinsky, under the desk in the Oval Office. Everybody knows about all that. The stain on the blue dress. But yeah, this was huge at the time. This was like after the O.J. Simpson trial, this was the next gigantic everywhere in news thing. But I'll talk a little bit about a few movies that came out this month. One is Apt Pupil, based on a Stephen King novella, which is like in between a short story and a novel. Usually when he writes novellas, it's like I can't remember it might have been in this one, but he has a collection called 4 Past Midnight with like 4 novellas in it, and they're like 250 something like that pages each, maybe a little less, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's a story about a high school student who discovers that there's actually a Nazi war criminal living in his neighborhood under an assumed name, and this kid's already like obsessed with like all things Nazi, and the two just like he keeps pressuring the guy for more information, and the guy's like doesn't want to give it, but then it's like basically just the guy had become obsessed with the old guy and wants to be like him, and it's a crazy movie. The second one isn't anything like that. It's The Lion King 2: Simba's Pride. Of course, it's got Simba and Nala's daughter, and she wants to marry someone from one of the prides from the Scar days that's been outcast, and and all that. I haven't seen that in forever. I need to watch that again. Of course, the original Lion King is an all-time classic, but The Lion King 2 is great too. And then the other movie is Bride of Chucky, which was the fourth Chucky movie, and of course we got Child's Play 1, 2, and 3. It's the first one to just have Chucky in the title, not just not Child's Play. And of course everybody remembers this if you like horror. It's got Jennifer Tilly in it, who plays Chucky's ex, and she goes and gets the doll and bring him back to life, and he ends up being a jerk to her, so she keeps him like in this like playpen and and finally gets out and electrocutes her in the bathtub, but then also brings his doll and basically does the voodoo transfer Ade Dewey Damela thing, and transfers Tiffany, who's the character, Jennifer Tilly's character, into the doll, which becomes known as the Tiffany doll. So, and they both got to get the Heart of Dumbella, or whatever it's called, off of Charles Lee Ray, which is Chucky's dead body in New Jersey. They got to get this like necklace he's wearing off so they can transfer into actual human people, because they just keep changing the rules of these things. But anyway, of course at the end of it they die, as much as Chucky and Tiffany can die, but Tiffany gets pregnant, and that picks up in Seed of Chucky. But anyway, it gives Chucky the look he's most known for now, which is kind of sad to me, because I remember the good old days of Chucky looking normal, but the stitched up look, because his body's all torn up from the third Chucky where he falls in this giant fan at the end. But she stitches him together, so that's why he's got that stitched up look. But I want to go into a few Halloween things. The last time I've only talked about one other October during this podcast, and we're on episode 32. So, like I said, I do it randomly, so you never know when it's going to pop up. But I list my top 5 horror movies released in 1998. Coming in at number 5 is Children, and this is the whole year, by the way. Whenever I do one with October, I just do for the whole year, because like the only horror movie that I liked was Bride of Chucky. I don't really consider Apt Pupil a horror movie. I mean, I guess in some ways it is, and not just because it's Stephen King. It's horrible what the people are doing, but there's no monsters or supernatural or anything like that, so I don't consider that as part of this list. Anyway, number 5 is Children of the Corn 5: Fields of Terror. Just a generic paint by numbers Children of the Corn 5000 sequel. It's good to watch. I've watched just to watch the whole collection of them, but it's not something you really go back to unless you randomly pick it out one day. Number 4, the Psycho remake, which is really funny. That Psycho song just played. That was not planned, I promise. The Psycho remake, which was the remake of that classic Alfred Hitchcock movie. And I remember hearing about it, that they literally filmed it like scene by scene, the exact way they filmed the original. Obviously it's in color with different actors and stuff. But I thought that was really cool that they paid that much attention to detail to try to make it like the original. Number 3, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Obviously the sequel to I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I think the third one in that series is coming out, I believe, this summer. Coming out, or it's already out, I can't remember which, but excited to see that. Coming in at number 2 is Halloween H2O, which of course is 20 years later. This is still in the Laurie is Michael's sister timeline of Halloween 1 and 2, and obviously it doesn't follow 3 is kind of by itself, the season of the witch with the masks. 6 more days to Halloween. But anyway, 4 and 5, was it 4 and 5 and 6, or maybe just 4? Yeah, 4, 5, and 6 really don't fit in this timeline, because unless you consider something else. But basically, they said that Laurie died, Jamie Lee Curtis's character. They said that she died in, the 4, 5, and 6 timeline. She died in a car crash or something. And that's why her sister Jamie, or her daughter Jamie, got adopted. But I don't even know if they tell why in H2O. Either H2O just happens right after Halloween 2, or she faked her death. Either way. And of course, none of that fits in the timeline of the 3 recent ones that were released. Halloween and 2018, and Halloween, it's Halloween Begins? I know the last one was Halloween Kills is the second one. Then Halloween Ends, it should have ended before that crap fest movie. Anyway. But yeah, that's Halloween H2O is a great movie. And then at number 1, just slightly edging it out, I put Bride of Chucky. And I just talked about that, so I don't need to go into the details of that movie. But that's my top 5 Halloween movies released that year. A few TV specials I want to go over that were released, and then I promise we're done here. We've passed the hour mark. Everybody, when they think of Halloween TV specials, they normally think of 2 things. The Simpsons and Roseanne were the 2 most famous. The Simpsons, or Roseanne was over at the time, so they weren't doing their stuff. But The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Everybody remembers the Treehouse of Horror. This was the 9th one. That'd been a tradition. I can't remember the year it started, but every year they have the Treehouse of Horror. Doug's Halloween Adventure was based on season 4, a season 4 episode, which I believe was a repeat at this time, but they aired it on Nickelodeon, and it was one of only 2 episodes of the original one where normally you get the episode split into 2. You get the first 15 minutes and the second. And this one, it was a full half-hour show, 22 minutes for TV time with commercials. But anyway, they go to this amusement park, and Doug and Skeeter want to ride this ride, but Roger scares them, and they end up scaring Roger back. But Blue's Clues even had one. It's called What is Blue Afraid Of? This is from season 1. Spoiler alert, it was an owl he was afraid of. Home Improvement, love that show. They were in season 8. Their episode was called Bewitched. Wilson, their neighbor, the one you didn't see his face, hosting a Halloween party, and he goes disappearing after it. And I guess his new girlfriend at the time identified herself as like a witch or something, and they're all trying to figure out what happened to Wilson. Gullah Gullah Island had one called Gullah Gullah Ghoul Land. And speaking of Doug, they had a newer one. This is when Disney had taken over. But from season 7, Night of the Living Doug. It's where the kids all go to BB, one of their friends' Halloween costume party. But yeah, that's just some Halloween stuff. Love talking about my favorite month of the year. But we're going to move on to next week. We're going to have episode 33. We're going to be talking about February of 1992. This is actually my 6th trip through 1992, which means that once it's over, we'll have half a year's worth of episodes. And I've talked before that when I finally do get done with a full year's worth of episodes, the next time I do that year will be like a retrospective on the year. Like I'll give like awards for like the best shows that won awards, or like music awards, or and just some overviews, so I'm not repeating everything I've said already. I might go over it a little bit again, but just briefly. If you want to in depth of that month and that year, go and watch that episode. Anyway, that'll be episode number 33 next week. Like I said, my 6th trip through 92. Last time we were back in 92 was actually the month before, January. That was episode 25, so that was like a couple months ago we covered that. I was 8 years old and in 2nd grade at the time, so we'll talk a little bit about that too. That was before right before the Marky Faux days. Travis had just turned 1 that year. But anyway, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time.
Tales from the 90's never die. In our hearts they testify. VCRs and mixtape spins, where every tale begins. Tales from the crypt, marathons. Whoa.